I never thought I'd find love again, especially not while hiding under a desk with my boss on my lap. James's voice breaks slightly as he looks directly into the camera. If you're wondering how a single dad ended up in that situation, and how those few whispered words completely changed both our lives, stay with me. This story might just give you hope when you least expect it. If this beginning caught your attention, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more real-life stories that prove second chances exist when you least expect them. The fluorescent lights of Morgan Financial buzzed overhead as James Carter rushed through the office, balancing a cardboard tray of coffee cups and his worn leather messenger bag. At 34, the lines around his eyes told of sleepless nights and responsibilities that weighed heavily on his shoulders. 6 years as a single father had taught him efficiency above all else, which was why he always arrived at work 45 minutes early. The office was peacefully empty at 7:15 a.m., just how he liked it. James could settle in, review his files, and prepare for the day before the chaos began. As senior financial analyst, he needed that quiet time to focus before meetings and client calls consumed his day. He placed a coffee on his desk and carried another toward the corner office. Victoria Morgan, the firm's CEO and his direct boss, was notorious for arriving early too. It had become their unspoken ritual. He'd bring coffee, she'd already be buried in spreadsheets, and they'd exchange brief pleasantries before diving into work. Today, however, Victoria wasn't at her desk. James set the coffee down anyway, knowing she'd appreciate it whenever she arrived. At 36, Victoria had built Morgan Financial from the ground up, turning it into one of the most respected boutique investment firms in the city. Her reputation for brilliance was matched only by her intensely private nature. James knew little about her personal life, only office rumors that she'd gone through a difficult breakup a year ago. She never discussed it, maintaining the professional boundary between them with practiced precision. He respected that. Boundaries were something he understood all too well since losing his wife to cancer when their daughter Lily was just 3. He returned to his desk, sipping his coffee while reviewing quarterly projections. The peaceful morning routine was shattered when the elevator dinged and Victoria burst into the office. Her normally impeccable appearance was slightly disheveled, her dark hair falling from its usual neat bun, her eyes wide with something James had never seen in them before: panic. "James," she whispered urgently, rushing toward his desk. "Is anyone else here?" He stood immediately, concern washing over him. "No, just us." "What's wrong?" Victoria glanced nervously toward the elevator. "My ex is downstairs. I saw his car pull up as I was walking in. He's been..." She hesitated, "following me. Showing up places. I have a restraining order, but..." The elevator dinged again. Victoria's face drained of color. "That's him. He must have seen me come in. I can't deal with this today." Without thinking, James grabbed her arm and pulled her toward his desk. "Under here," he whispered, guiding her beneath the large oak desk. It was spacious underneath, a remnant from the office's previous occupant who had been considerably taller than James. Victoria hesitated for only a second before ducking under. James quickly followed, pulling his chair in after them. The space was tight, forcing Victoria to sit awkwardly across his lap as they both tried to make themselves as small as possible. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her body tense against his. "Don't be," James replied softly, trying to ignore how inappropriate this would look to anyone else. His boss was literally sitting on his lap, her expensive perfume filling his senses, her shoulder pressed against his chest. They heard footsteps entering the office space, heavy and determined. "Victoria," a male voice called out. "I know you're here. Your car's outside." James felt Victoria tremble slightly. Instinctively, he placed a steadying hand on her arm. She was breathing rapidly, clearly terrified. "I just want to talk," the man continued, his voice getting closer. "You can't keep avoiding me forever." Victoria's breathing quickened further. James could feel her heart racing. Without thinking, he leaned close to her ear and whispered, "You're safe. I won't let anything happen to you." The footsteps stopped alarmingly close to James's desk. They both froze, barely breathing. James could see expensive leather shoes through the small gap beneath the desk panel. "Sir, can I help you?" A new voice entered the scene. Marjorie, the receptionist, must have arrived for her 8 a.m. shift. "I'm looking for Victoria Morgan," the man said, his tone suddenly professional. "Ms. Morgan isn't available right now. Do you have an appointment?" Marjorie's voice was polite but firm. "No, but she'll want to see me. I'm an old friend." "I'm afraid that's not possible without an appointment. Security policy. I can take your name and have her call you." There was a tense pause before the man replied, "That won't be necessary. I'll catch up with her another time." The footsteps retreated, followed by the ding of the elevator. Neither James nor Victoria moved until they heard Marjorie settle at her desk, the familiar sound of her computer booting up. "I think he's gone," James whispered. Victoria nodded but didn't move immediately. She seemed frozen, still processing what had happened. James became acutely aware of their position, his boss curled against him, his arms still protectively around her. "Thank you," she finally whispered, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this." "Don't apologize," James said softly. "Everyone needs help sometimes." Victoria turned slightly to look at him, their faces inches apart in the confined space. For the first time, James noticed the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the small freckle near her temple usually hidden by her hair. "What you said," she whispered. "About me being safe, no one said that to me in a very long time." Something shifted between them in that moment, a crack in the professional veneer they'd both maintained for years. Before either could acknowledge it, Victoria carefully extracted herself from under the desk, smoothing her skirt and tucking her hair back into place. By the time James emerged, she had already composed herself, once again the confident CEO. "This stays between us," she said, her voice steady but not unkind. "Of course," James nodded, understanding her need to maintain her authority. Victoria hesitated, then added, "The coffee. Thank you for that too." She picked up the cup from her office, nodded once more, and disappeared into her corner office, closing the door firmly behind her. James sat at his desk, trying to process what had just happened. In those few minutes, he'd seen a completely different side to Victoria Morgan, vulnerable, frightened, human. And something about holding her, protecting her, had awakened feelings he thought had died with his wife 6 years ago. The next few days passed with a strange new tension between them. Victoria was professional as always, but James caught her watching him during meetings, her expression thoughtful. For his part, he couldn't stop thinking about those moments under the desk, her weight against him, the scent of her perfume, the way she trembled when he promised she was safe. On Friday afternoon, Victoria stopped by his desk as the office was emptying for the weekend. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. James nodded, following her to her office. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face him. "I owe you an explanation," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "You don't owe me anything," James replied, but took the offered seat. Victoria sighed, perching on the edge of her desk rather than sitting behind it. "The man you saw was Michael Harrington. We were engaged until last year, when I discovered he had a controlling, possessive side I hadn't seen before." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "When I broke things off, he didn't take it well. Started showing up at my home, my gym, restaurants where I was having dinner. The restraining order helped for a while, but recently he started pushing boundaries again." James listened quietly, seeing the strain beneath her composed exterior. "I've always kept my personal life separate from work," Victoria continued. "It's important to me that people here see me as a leader, not—" She trailed off. "Not someone who needs help sometimes?" James finished gently. Victoria's eyes met his, surprised by his perception. "Yes, exactly. Everyone needs help sometimes," James repeated his words from earlier in the week. "Even CEOs." Even single dads who pretend they have it all together. A small smile touched Victoria's lips. Is that what you do? Pretend? James nodded. Every day. For Lily, my daughter. She needs to believe Dad has everything under control, even when I'm terrified I'm messing it all up. Something in Victoria's expression softened. How old is she now? 6. 9, James corrected, surprised Victoria remembered Lily at all. He'd mentioned her only occasionally at company events. 9, Victoria repeated. That's a good age. Old enough for real conversations, young enough to still think her dad is a superhero. James laughed. Some superhero. Last week I burned dinner 3 nights in a row. What happened the other 4 nights? Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Takeout, James admitted. I'm still figuring out this whole cooking thing. Victoria's smile widened. I could help with that, you know. I'm actually a decent cook. The offer hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. I should get going, James said after a moment. Lily's waiting at after-school care. Victoria nodded, straightening up. Of course. Thank you for listening, James. And for Monday. I won't forget it. As James gathered his things to leave, Victoria added, your daughter is lucky to have a father who tries so hard. The simple compliment stayed with him all weekend. Monday morning brought a surprise. When James arrived with his usual 2 coffees, he found a small paper bag on his desk with a note, homemade muffins. Better than the cafeterias. The gesture was small but significant. Victoria had never shared anything personal before, let alone something she'd made herself. The muffins were delicious, blueberry with a hint of lemon, and James found himself smiling as he ate one with his coffee. When Victoria emerged from her office for the morning meeting, their eyes met briefly. She raised an eyebrow in silent question, and he nodded his appreciation. Something had definitely changed between them. Over the next few weeks, a new pattern emerged. James still brought coffee each morning, but now Victoria occasionally left small gifts on his desk, homemade cookies, a book she thought he might enjoy, once even a child's science kit with a note saying, Lily might like this. My niece did. They began talking more, not just about work but about their lives. James learned that Victoria had practically raised her younger sister after their parents died, putting herself through college while caring for a teenager. Victoria discovered that James had been an aspiring photographer before settling into finance for the stability it offered his family. Their conversations remained professional at the office, but James found himself looking forward to the quiet moments when they could talk without pretense. Victoria seemed to feel the same, often finding reasons to consult with him at the end of the day when most staff had left. Neither mentioned the incident with Michael again, though James noticed Victoria seemed more relaxed, as if sharing her burden had lightened it somehow. Then came the company's annual client appreciation dinner. As CEO, Victoria was expected to attend and mingle with their most important clients. James, as senior analyst, was also required to be there. Do you have someone watching Lily tonight? Victoria asked as they reviewed the guest list that afternoon. James nodded. My neighbor. She's retired and loves having Lily over. Victoria hesitated before asking, is it difficult? Balancing everything on your own? Some days are harder than others, James admitted. Lily's teacher wants parents to volunteer for the science fair next month, but it's the same week as the quarterly reviews. Little things like that, having to choose between work and being there for her, those are the hardest. Victoria was quiet for a moment. You should take the day off for the science fair. Family comes first. I couldn't. You can, Victoria interrupted. I'm your boss, remember? I'm telling you it's fine. James smiled gratefully. Thank you. Lily will be thrilled. That night at the client dinner, James noticed Victoria watching him from across the room as he charmed a difficult client into renewing their contract. When their eyes met, she raised her glass slightly in acknowledgement. The simple gesture sent an unexpected warmth through him. Later, as the event wound down, Victoria approached him at the bar. "You're good with people," she observed, ordering a sparkling water. "They trust you." "I just listen," James shrugged. "Most people just want to be heard." Victoria studied him thoughtfully. "Is that what you did for me? Just listened?" "I did more than listen," James reminded her with a small smile. "I let you sit on my lap." Victoria laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that turned heads nearby. James realized he'd never heard her really laugh before. It transformed her face, making her look younger, lighter. "That was definitely above and beyond," she agreed, her eyes sparkling with amusement. As the evening ended, they found themselves walking out together. The night was cool but pleasant, stars visible despite the city lights. "Do you need a ride home?" Victoria asked, nodding toward the parking garage. James shook his head. "I'm just a few blocks away. I usually walk." Victoria hesitated, then said, "I could use some fresh air. Mind if I walk with you?" They strolled through the quiet streets, their conversation flowing easily from work to books to their favorite places in the city. When they reached James's apartment building, neither seemed ready for the evening to end. "Would you like to come up for coffee?" James offered, then quickly added, "Just coffee. I know this is complicated." Victoria considered for a moment before nodding. "Just coffee sounds perfect." James's apartment was modest but warm, clearly a home, not just a place to sleep. Photos of Lily covered one wall, tracking her growth from a toddler to the gap-toothed 9-year-old she was now. Books filled the shelves, alongside Lily's art projects and school awards. "It's not much," James said, suddenly self-conscious about the mismatched furniture and crayon drawings on the refrigerator. "It's wonderful," Victoria replied sincerely. "It feels like a home." As James made coffee, Victoria wandered to the photo wall, studying the images of his life with Lily. "She looks like you," she observed. Same smile. "She has her mother's eyes though," James said quietly, bringing 2 mugs to the living room. "And her stubbornness." Victoria accepted the coffee and sat on the couch. "Do you talk about her mother with her?" James nodded, sitting beside her. "All the time. I never want Lily to forget her. We have a special box of memories, photos, letters, little things that were important to Sarah. On her birthday and Mother's Day, we go through it together." "That's beautiful," Victoria said softly. "You're giving Lily something precious, permission to remember and grieve." "What about you?" James asked gently. "Do you have someone to talk to about the difficult things?" Victoria stared into her coffee. "Not really. I've always handled things on my own." "You don't have to," James said, his voice low. "Not anymore."